Welcome, it's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Correa. He's a member of the California State Senate, also chair of the Select Committee on California and Mexico and its relations with each other. And as a result, I want to speak with you about some immigration issues. There's no question that in California there's tremendous frustration about the lack of immigration reform coming out of Washington, D.C. So as I understand it, California has taken some steps to pass some laws that it can within its purview as a state. One of them deals with driver's licenses. Tell us about the law that just passed.
Let me pull back and look at the
Please.
big picture.
Please, sir.
Immigration reform. The last one that happened under President Reagan 25 years ago. Today, this is a frustration that is not only in California but throughout the country. And you have states going different ways. Alabama, Arizona going one way. California 20 years ago went the Alabama, Arizona way. Now we're going another way.
Right.
So at this point, Jerry Brown and the legislature said, we're not going to wait for Washington anymore. We're going to move ahead with our own immigration reform measures that we think are important for California. Driver's license, definitely front and center.
So let's talk about the issue. The issue today is, can someone who is undocumented obtain a driver's license? Prior, the answer is was no.
20 years ago, 1993, you could. 1994, no. So in 93, we changed the law that said you could not. Today, we've changed the law back, but not back to pre-1993, but really, it's a kind of in-between step because...
Which is what?
Which is you can now get a driver's license, meaning probably when the DMV is ready to issue them under the new laws and regs, but it'll be a different license that'll have a mark on it.
So show us, for example, here's your license.
Yeah, here's my license right here, and put my glasses on. It has a DL in front of my license number.
Right.
And that will probably have a DC in front of it. So that will be a mark that'll be distinguishable for the law enforcement authorities that'll say this is a different kind of license.
It is for someone who is undocumented.
Who cannot produce the regular birth certificate or your citizenship papers. So then the DMV flips to a different set of papers that you have to produce. You got to produce something to show who you are, and therefore this is a different license. Now let me tell you.
Please.
We know this is a good solution, and I'll tell you why. Because all the progressive folks that did not want a different license opposed the bill.
Okay.
And all
so the far left didn't like it.
Far left didn't like it. The far right said no. So we figured this has to work because people on the right and the left don't like it.
So I understand one of the main reasons why this bill ultimately succeeded. And remember, it had been passed several times and vetoed several times by different governors, focused upon insurance. You cannot get insurance in California unless you have a driver's license. And it's the law that you must have insurance. So the folks that were driving without licenses were breaking the law on a whole host of grounds.
This is a good public safety measure. What it does, having a driver's license says you're more secure on the road. Number one, you can go out and learn how to drive properly because a lot of folks out there driving that I would argue don't know how to drive. So you take your driving test, you get your license, you get insurance, then you buy a car. Everybody is much better off on that road.
But is it not providing a pass for individuals who really are not supposed to be here?
We need immigration reform at the federal level. These folks that are taking care of our kids, that are cooking our food at restaurants, that are mowing our lawns, doing this kind of work, should be able to do it legally. But because the federal reform is going to be stuck forever, my God, they're still stuck on Obamacare. By the time they get to this, it'll be a few more years. States individually have to move ahead.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
And if you can, dig deep on this one, because it really was quite intriguing to me, just as an observer, at the level of celebration once this bill was signed. I'm not taking away, and I'm not commenting on whether it should or should not have been signed. it just was interesting to me. I mean, I would think that the passage of the DREAM Act, for example, allowing undocumented to attend college or be able to access financial aid, that seems like that's a huge accomplishment. But yet it was the driver's license bill that caused just a mass celebration. Why?
Again, big picture perspective. If you're a student, you're trying to get your education, the DREAM Act is your passport to tomorrow. If you're a worker trying to get to work, if you're a mom or dad trying to take the kids to school, then having that driver's license makes all the difference in the world. And really in Southern California, where the automobile, the road are kings, this is a big changer when it comes to your lifestyle. And on top of that, every time I drive down the street in my community, I see the peace officers pulling people over, 5 or 6 cars at a time, and right behind them are tow trucks. And these folks probably didn't have a license, so as soon as they get pulled over, the tow trucks are taking those cars. And the only people that benefit off of that system are probably the towing companies and nobody else. I think it's time to change that. I think we're going to change it.
Well, it's been changed. I mean, the law was signed.
It is signed and it'll be in effect.
Whenever it may be. Let's shift gears slightly and talk about what was also another bill signed by the governor, known as the Trust Act. He had vetoed a version of it last year. This year he signed it. And it deals with whether law enforcement is required to turn over the undocumented to immigration services upon arrest and or conviction.
And release.
And release. So why don't you tell us about the Trust Act?
Again, big picture.
Please.
Half a dozen years ago, I should say, we had this new concept of cooperation between ICE, immigration, and the local police.
Secure communities.
Before that, it had not occurred and wasn't as popular. All of a sudden, everybody was running to sign these contracts to cooperation, association between ICE, feds, and the locals. And the argument was made then that this was a public safety measure intended to go after the worst criminals in our society. What ended up happening was massive deportations. Under the Obama administration, as you know, more folks have been deported than any other president in the history of this country.
More than George Bush.
More than Bush and 1 and 2 and Clinton all put together. So what happened was that's not what happened. You have a person riding his bike home, again, driver's license, riding his bike home at 2 in the morning. He's probably coming home from that restaurant, finishing washing the dishes, or from work somewhere. Police officer pulls him over, whatever the reason may be. This person will be, essentially taken to county jail eventually, be checked, and then will be deported because he can't prove that he should be in this country. Some people say, great, that's what should happen. My argument is that that wasn't the original intent of this agreement between ICE and the locals. So what this new bill says is, that's the agreement. If you pull this person over because he's committed a heinous crime, which I believe if you do, there's no room for you in this country, then you should be turned over to ICE. If, again, your charge is you're riding your bike on the wrong side of the road, it's a different matter.
So under the Trust Act, what will happen is for minor offenses, no reference to ICE.
Essentially, that's correct.
For major offenses, there will be that reference. At the same time, you do have law enforcement coming down on two sides of this issue. Some in law enforcement are cheering, others are frustrated. What's your sense? We've heard immigrant communities saying, look, without the Trust Act, we don't want to talk to the cops. And so some have argued that this actually could decrease criminal events because now the immigrant communities will be more willing to talk because they won't fear deportation.
Two issues. Issue number one, public safety. Big picture, immigration is a passionate issue with emotions running high on both sides.
Of course.
I think the public safety community is also emotionally charged on both sides. You have a lot of folks, rank and file, police chiefs that say bad idea, have others on the other side say great idea, both chiefs and local police. Randy Becks, LAPD police chief, says great idea. Why? Because he says when my guys pull somebody over, I want to know who they're pulling over. I want to know who they're dealing
course.
with. Now I'll give you a real.
Will you come back?
Yes.
We're out of time, unfortunately. He's Luke Correa. I'm
I
Brad
have a great
Pomerance.
story for
You'll
you.
come back, promise? I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
How many states allow undocumented individuals to obtain driver's licenses? According to the National Immigration Law Center, as of October 2013, 11 states allow individuals to obtain a driver's license regardless of their immigration status.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Bonnie Lowenthal. She's a member of the California State Assembly. She is also a candidate for mayor of the city of Long Beach. That election will be held in April
8th.
April 8th, 2014. Be sure to tune in for that. But I want to focus on a bill in which you have demonstrated tremendous passion, and that deals with home care services.
Yes.
And it's a little complicated when we're dealing with public home care, private home care. Separate it out for us, if you may.
Okay. The public home care agencies do have licensing.
Right.
So people who go to your home to work with grooming, bathing,
Right.
all those kinds of things. If you're in a public agency, you get background checks, you have
Sure.
certification. For the private home care agencies, that doesn't exist.
Wow. Let me
So-
ask you, if I may,
Sure.
briefly. We know that home care had been cut dramatically during this recent recession.
Correct.
Have we brought those levels back?
It's going to take years
Okay.
to come back where we were,
Okay.
whether it's home care, whether it's education. It takes years to come back to the previous level and beyond.
Right. So I digress, and now let's get back to the issue at hand, which is the distinction, as you said, between public home care services and private. Public, there's licenses. Private,
My bill would provide licenses for home care agencies. It would require everyone who works for a home care agency to have a background check, to have TB screening, and to have a modicum of training.
Right.
So that whenever you go to a website to look for someone from a home care agency, you would know that they've had those things.
And are we focused on home care agencies that are providing medical services, non-medical services?
Non-medical services, Brad, because the ones who provide medical services, licensing exists.
I see. Private or public.
Correct.
So how did this issue come to you? Because it is very, arcane, but important, no doubt. So how have you become aware
Well,
of
the
this?
California Congress of Seniors and many others, AARP and so on, were so concerned that seniors didn't have the assurance. I mean, this is frankly a public safety issue, because if you bring someone into your home, you want to make sure you're not going to be robbed blind.
Right.
You want to make sure that you'll be treated properly, that your loved one will be treated properly
Right.
when you're not there.
And what's so interesting is the demographers are telling us that the number of Californians, the number of Americans who will live longer and will need home care services, it's just going to explode.
Yes.
I mean, this is really quite a relevant issue, especially even for my age bracket, because we're the ones that are heading in that direction.
The baby boomers.
Right, exactly,
Yes,
exactly.
that's true.
And so the bill was signed by the governor.
The bill, we have several more days.
Okay.
We are very
We're
hopeful.
waiting, okay, as we speak
We've
today.
worked this out with the governor's office, and we are very hopeful that it will be signed.
Is this something that has been passed in other states? Are
Yes.
So we know that
Yes, I don't remember the number of other states.
it's
but
23. Your staff told me. There you have it.
they're ahead of the game.
Right, exactly.
So it's very reasonable, it's protective, it's a consumer protection
Right.
bill.
Okay, I want to shift gears slightly, if I may, and
Please.
speak with you about the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
As we speak today, we're a few weeks into the Affordable Care Act, and what's most interesting to me as an observer is the number of people that signed on to Covered California and corollary websites, websites like that in other states. The interest was much higher than anticipated.
I know. And I would say that's part of the reason for computer snags,
Okay,
because there
right.
was a number of people that, nobody expected to have that many. But I believe that in California alone, we had over 16,000 in week one.
Right, just pure signups.
Yes.
That's not even
Yes.
people signing on. I mean, over 500,000 on day one signing
Correct.
on.
Correct.
Why? Why? Because when you look at the polls, forget approve, disapprove of Obamacare, the knowledge was not high. And so it's so interesting to me that people didn't even really understand what the exchanges were, and yet you have all these people signing on, California, Kentucky, wherever it may be.
It's kind of funny. There was some work done that said that if you called it Obamacare, some people were opposed to it. But as soon as you said affordable care, they said, of course we want that. So I think that really accounts for the interest in this. People understand that here in California, we have close to 7 million uninsured.
It's true.
And the fact is, we are paying for them. So the healthier we can get our population, the more we can provide prevention through good, solid, affordable care, all of our costs will come down.
Has your staff, has your office received queries as you're walking around your district? You're also, as we know, running for mayor. Are people talking to you about the affordable care?
Oh, very much so.
Really?
And in fact, I've been sending out e-alerts so that people can find a place to go to get the information. People want the information. People have felt burdened for so many years by the cost of health care. So here is a glimmering of hope that those costs ultimately will go down with a healthier society.
So we know there's a lot of discussion about the exchanges. Covered California, we've seen ads on television. There's no doubt that there's a lot out there on that. But I want to ask you though about the Medicaid expansion, because Covered California will benefit small businesses, individuals. There's a subsidy as part of Covered California if you do sign up through an exchange. But the Medicaid expansion is for those that may be in the most need. And yet I'm just not hearing a lot about that, about whether those signups are up or down or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers. I do know that we passed a bill in the Health Committee and it was signed by the governor, it was brought up by the speaker, that we would expand Medi-Cal to, if I remember right, 138% of the poverty level. Does that number sound right to you?
Yes, I can tell you. Yeah, I can find that. But keep going.
You have that in your notes.
Right.
So I think we were eager to do that because we just didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And if those were folks who were not going to be eligible for the Affordable Care Act or have the ability to pay, we wanted to make sure they were covered too.
And what's so interesting to me about the Medicaid expansion, and whether you support or oppose Obamacare, what we do know is that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states could decide whether to expand.
Yes.
It could not be mandated.
That's correct.
California chose to expand.
Yes.
The states that have the highest uninsured rates, those are the states that chose not to expand. The redder states in the South, in the Midwest. And so, I mean, obviously you represent California, but what happens to those people? I mean, do we have a sense? It's almost...
what I'd like to say is that that is the electorate. That's the electorate.
Right.
And so all of the people in every state have a choice to elect somebody who will best represent them. And if health care is important to them, they're going to look and see what their representatives are doing. And they should do that.
And let's talk about representatives, because you're looking to represent Long Beach as its mayor.
I certainly
As its mayor. And I want to briefly discuss your decision to run for mayor. You had been on the city council for, was it 2 terms?
I was on the council for 2 terms. I was on the school board for 2 terms. And this is my 3rd and final term in the assembly. But with over 40 years in Long Beach, raising my family here, just 40, I have a long history with the people of Long Beach, representing them, working with them, raising our kids together. And so I'm ready to run for mayor. I've been elected citywide 3 times here in Long Beach, as well as my own district.
So how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for asking.
This is not a small city. I mean, this is 500,000 people.
We are close to 500,000, not quite.
What are you hearing? What are people saying to you?
Well,
What are their
people
hopes
are
and fears?
saying it's mine to lose. That's
Okay,
what people
well,
are
aside
saying.
from that-
I like that.
Right.
I've come in as the
Right.
front runner.
Right.
I certainly have great respect for my opponents, but I'm planning on winning. I'm planning on leading this city. I want to continue the great work that's been done before me. It's a city with terrific assets.
Okay.
You know, we have an airport, we have port, we have water department, we have development for the future.
She is Bonnie Lowenthal, member of the California State Assembly, candidate for mayor of Long Beach. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back.
What percentage of the employed in California maintain no health insurance? 10, 17, 25, or 33%? According to the California Healthcare Foundation, 25% of workers in California have no health insurance.
Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Walter Zelman. Dr. Zelman is a professor, chair of the Health Sciences Department at Cal State LA. He has been involved in healthcare reform for literally decades. I remember your name from when First Lady Hillary Clinton was looking at healthcare reform. But we are now 20 years later, and the Affordable Care Act is in play. We've had the exchanges roll out. I want to get a sense from you, what are the early reviews on the healthcare exchanges?
Well, obviously, there have been some problems that have been widely reported. I wish people wouldn't make such a big deal of it. I mean, when big programs are rolled out like this, they often have glitches or problems. And the particular difficulty that I think the exchanges are having is with the subsidies, that so many people are going to get assistance, premium assistance in purchasing insurance, that it's not just like enrolling with a regular insurance company.
Right.
You've got to go through all the government processes to make sure the information is right, so we make sure your income is right, and that means you get this much subsidy and this
Right.
much, you get that much premium. And so it's complicated and having some problems, but you know, it's not like that you're trying to buy tickets for the World Series,
Right.
and there are only 1,000 tickets left, and if you don't get in right now, you're not going to get it. The prices are not going to change for months. You have up till December 15th. I tell
If
people,
you want to have
if you want
insurance
to do
by
this,
January 1st.
by January 1.
But open enrollment runs
We'll
through.
run through March 30th.
Right.
I tell people, relax, come back in a week or
Right.
two, and it'll
But
work out.
That being said, are you surprised by the relative popularity of the websites? I mean, in the first weeks, the number of hits were way over expectations. Even in states like Kentucky, I'm sure you read some of the same articles I did, they're having tremendous enrollment numbers. What's going on here?
Well, as a supporter of reform, I'd like to say I'm not surprised, but I am surprised. And I think most people have been surprised by the enormity of the response. And whether you're looking at California or other states or the national government's website, because the national government is handling a lot of it, it's been enormous. It's been an extraordinary outpouring of interest. Now, obviously, some of that are people going out there just to find out.
Sure.
Some are people like you who go
Right.
on there to figure out I'm
Right.
going to interview someone, I want to learn something. But
that being
it's still
said,
enormous.
But enrollments
response.
are actually fairly high.
Yes,
I
it
mean, the
seems that
actual
way.
numbers of people that have acquired policies, those are actually higher than anticipated. At the same time, we know that in order for the exchanges to work, there needs to be a nice mix of young and healthy, as well as old and infirm, or any combination thereof. Do we have a sense, or can we ever have a sense, about the mix of folks that are applying for plans through the exchanges?
Well, one nice thing is, and it might be nice from an insurance perspective if we would know this, but it's good from a public policy perspective that we don't. One nice thing would be to say, well, we know how many sicker people are coming in and how many healthier people are coming in. But we don't know that, and we won't know that because we don't ask those questions anymore.
Right. No more pre-existing condition exclusions.
Those questions are out.
Right.
Insurance companies can ask those questions, which I think is a real positive.
Right.
That means everybody can access insurance no matter what your health status is.
Right.
But it also means we don't know.
What about old young though? That we can figure out, no?
That we will know because especially if you're going through an exchange like Covered California here in California, then if you wish to get a subsidy or a government support payment, you must go through the exchange or Covered California here in California. And the support level is based in part on the cost of your premium is based in part on your age and on your income. So we will have data on income and age, but we won't have data on
Health.
how sick people are.
That being said, we do know that if the young don't sign up in significant numbers, there could be a problem. And the Cal State system is looking to spread the word, get the message out. And I understand you're part of, are you running that program? What is it, sir?
Yes.
Yes, okay, you're running the Cal State program. Tell us more about it.
I'm from Cal State OA.
Yes.
Cal State has a grant from Covered California, which is the state organization implementing the new health reform law here in California.
Got it.
And they gave us money, the purpose of which is to educate the student body and the families of our students, and in large part the staffs who work on our campuses, some of whom work part-time and are not eligible for state insurance. So our target is our students, some of the staff there, and the families of the students, to educate them about what Covered California is, educate them about their new rights and opportunities under the new law, so that many of them will then decide to go out and purchase insurance. And we estimate that at least 70% of the students in the Cal State system, income-wise at least, are eligible for premium assistance. Either they're going to get Medi-Cal, which
Right.
will be free to them, or they're going to get premium assistance in Covered California, the new California exchange.
Aren't college students, if they're under 26, eligible to just stay on their parents' policy?
They are eligible, and they probably will stay on their parents' policy, providing the parents have a policy paid for by the employer. But if the parents are buying insurance individually, now they may want to go into Covered California because they're likely to get with their children more options in Covered California and a lower price.
I want to talk about Medi-Cal, Medicaid. You mentioned it, and we know that the U.S. Supreme Court, when they upheld the Affordable Care Act, they did say that the federal government cannot mandate that the states expand Medicaid. So states have made individual decisions. California chose early on to expand Medicaid. And I haven't heard much about whether we've seen those that are in the highest need for assistance, if they're applying for Medicaid under the expansion.
Well, those applications are just beginning to start now too.
Okay.
Although California does have a complicated transition mechanism by which a lot of people are already in a new kind of program that's going to be transferred directly into Medi-Cal. But most of the folks who are low income and eligible for Medi-Cal will be able to enroll in Medi-Cal starting a few weeks ago, and they too will find they're in Medi-Cal as of January 1.
But how are they finding out? I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, if they call the exchange or try to sign up through the exchange, if they wind up qualifying for the expansion, that they'll get deferred, they'll get diverted?
They'll get diverted might be a kind of negative way of putting it, but yeah, they're going to get sent to the proper people who can enroll them for Medi-Cal, which is a separate program.
And then otherwise, is the word getting out? The reason I say, look, I've seen a lot of ads for Covered California, no doubt, but I haven't seen a lot on this whole Medicaid expansion issue. And that's free to California for at least 2 years, 100% coverage through the federal government. So is the word getting out on the Medicaid expansion?
Not working on the Medicaid expansion as directly, I don't know that I have an answer to that. But I think a lot of the Medicaid expansion, in a sense, has already taken place because California has prepared for that over the last year or so by creating a program into which people can go and then transfer directly into the new Medi-Cal. But on our program, for example, we think an awful lot of our students will be eligible for Medi-Cal. And when they come to us, we can show them, depending upon what their income is, which of the programs they're eligible for. Are they eligible for Medi-Cal, or are they eligible for premium assistance in Covered California, the new California exchange?
I want to ask also about those states where we are not seeing the Medicaid expansion. And what's most interesting about it is they're almost uniformly red states, and they're almost uniformly states with the highest uninsured rates. And so I'm wondering, what happens to those people?
I think that's a great question, but I think you have to ask those governors and those states that aren't doing it. They will be left uninsured, and they will be left outside of Medi-Cal. And what's so extraordinary about this, and I know this has been pointed out by many people, is that the federal government is paying virtually the entire amount of the Medi-Cal expansion, 90% of it. Now, some of that will change over
It's 100%
in the years.
then to 90%,
yes.
right.
But it's a huge amount of money, and the states that are not taking the new Medi-Cal, not taking the expansion, are still going to be left with all those uninsured.
And who
They're gonna-
pays
they're-
their bills?
They're going to have to
The
pay for them.
states, not the
The
feds?
states will have to pay for safety nets and county facilities that take care of the uninsured. So here they have an opportunity to get federal government money to put all these folks in Medicaid,
Right.
and they're not taking it. And I think that's not going to last. Just as when we first started Medicaid back in the mid-1960s, some states didn't go in right away.
Our guest has been Walter Zelman. He's the chair of the Public Health Department at Cal State LA. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.